about the first theory a little bit, which is, okay, it truly is something extraterrestrial. And I think that I've caught a little guff for this in the past. It's not that I don't disbelieve in aliens.
You don't believe in aliens, though.
I believe in aliens. It's just a lot of things that are automatically attributed to aliens strike me wrong because it doesn't make sense. But I'm going to suspend that.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about this. I don't understand why something like this would be circling the globe for so long, basically doing nothing.
No.
Well, but we don't really know that it's been circling the globe that long.
Okay,
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, we don't
know
know.
how long it's been there. According to what we evidently in the 50s is when we figured out something was up
So
there.
60 years, okay, and then you can just go ahead and assume it's possible that a lifespan isn't the same, right? Their time scale isn't the same. Also, there's something to be said for gathering data. And you want a big sample source for that data.
There might not be. It might be a robotic probe and not
Right.
actually
Right.
people by aliens.
And the thing that I had to, this is the way I had to deal with it in my head is, okay, well, we keep hearing stuff about it disappearing and it changing its course a little bit. So maybe it's a little shy and it's happily rotating or circling the globe, and then, oh look, a couple of rockets pop up because I need to get out of the neighborhood. So it's got to have some kind of control, pushes itself farther away from the planet. Look, the rockets are gone. Yay! Comes back in. Oh, now we're, us humans, in space all the time. So it has to stay farther out to keep from being detected. So I can see if it is an information gathering thing and it doesn't want to be discovered, I can see why that would be, but it's still weird to me that the orbit has changed so much.
I
yeah.
guess I don't have that problem because I choose to disbelieve the reports of the orbit changing that much.
There's also that.
I mean, there are consistent reports throughout time, right, that it's been essentially the same orbit.
Essentially.
Right. Versus like a few outliers where it's just people who are clearly describing something else.
Exactly.
Who are saying it's the Black Knight satellite. So it's not a problem to me that it would just be in the same orbit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I can run with that.
Yeah.
And we've already gone into what the reason for the LDE would be.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to hash that up anymore.
Not really. But you're right. I mean, it could well be that the whole point of that thing was just to wait until we started popping up rockets, and then its job is done. Now it just notifies home that we've achieved a level of technological advancement to where we can actually put things in orbit.
And then it tells home and then gets out of Dodge.
It either runs away or it fires its retros and plunges into our atmosphere and burns up.
Right.
Or
it goes dormant.
It also
Who knows?
could be-
I mean, it could have been what burned up in the atmosphere over Russia the other year.
Yeah, last year, whatever that was. Yeah.
I don't know. You don't know.
I think
You're
it would have.
absolutely right. I don't know that.
I think it would have done the job earlier than that, but because it would have detected all the radar waves that are used to track things in orbit.
Well, it might have waited long enough to make sure we didn't destroy ourselves.
How's it going to stop us from destroying ourselves?
No. Wait to make sure we didn't before reporting home.
We still could.
Yeah,
We still could.
Easily.
Yeah.
But
Well, as far as extraterrestrial origins, it actually could, and this is entirely credible, it could be extraterrestrial, because extraterrestrial is just anything that's not on planet Earth, or not of planet Earth. So imagine it's just a small asteroid or a meteor, something like meteoroid, that just happened to come along and get caught for a while in orbit around, that got lassoed into orbit around our planet in a highly irregular orbit. And you would expect that if something got nabbed.
things don't just naturally go into perfect orbits.
No, they don't. They're not going to go into they're going to go into a very erratic orbit like this one. And so it's entirely possible that something came along and wound up in orbit around us for a while, and then just eventually its orbit deteriorated and it plunged into our atmosphere.
Or it finally got slingshotted away.
That's possible too. Although it sounds like this thing was in a fairly stable orbit from the way people are talking about it.
The way people are talking about it, I think, is an apt description, which
the way people
makes
are
it
talking
hard
about it.
to say that that's a concrete fact.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it was in a stable long-term orbit, and then it's not going to suddenly slingshot itself away, but it will eventually probably, the orbit will decay, and it'll go into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So So it could really be extraterrestrial.
It could just be a bit of space debris. You're right.
A bit of space rock.
Yeah. Let's move to the next theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to make some people mad. I'm okay with that. When I say that the next theory is that it was made up for fun or to stir people up. Mm-hmm. And bear with me as I go through this, because you two know, but our listeners don't know where I'm heading with this in the images that I've shown you for the reason why.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, people do go on the internet and they make things up, or on a more mundane scale, they totally misinterpret something.
Yeah.
And then they shout it to everybody they know, and then that gets repeated as well.
We do that all the time.
Here's an example. I've seen there's an image out there that I've seen that is supposedly from Apollo 10 showing the Black Knight satellite. Mm-hmm. And I wasted so much time going through the Apollo 10 photos and not finding it. And then I started just going through all of the photos that were available from NASA, and lo and behold, I actually found the photo itself in its raw format.
Nice.
Yeah, I got lucky. But
NASA has a ton of photographs.
I know. I couldn't believe I found it.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe I found it. But here's the thing. I then wasted even more time screwing around with that image in Photoshop, because here's the thing. The website that I have seen this on, there's a couple of them, say, look at this alien spacecraft that is the Black Knight satellite that was found in this Apollo 10 image. Mm-hmm. The image has no date. It has no location that it was shot from. The image is not good quality. And I'm going to walk through some of these facts, because these are the things that make our job so hard. So when I find a very blatant one, I have to call it out so people can kind of think what's going on when they're seeing some of this. So the exposure is really bad, but there's also stuff all over this image. There's water spots, and I found hairs on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which tell me that it was a print and not a negative that was scanned in.
And you got this off the NASA website or somewhere else?
NASA website. Huge, 300 DPI res, huge image. It was, I mean, it was like 100 megs or something. It was god-awful huge. But if it had been scanned in from a negative, a hair would have been gigantic. But that wasn't the case. They were really small on the image, which means it has to be a print.
Okay.
Same thing with the water spots.
Or it could have been a really huge
dust.
negative.
Large format negative, which I haven't heard of those being used in those early programs. That would be a really, really fine hair to be picked up. Like this, it looks like cat hair.
Yeah.
But when I put it in Photoshop and I adjusted it multiple times in multiple ways to correct the exposure so that the background, which is space, is the right color, which is black, this thing disappears. So I'm pretty positive that this thing was dust, or more likely lint or something. Plus, never mind the fact that this photo, it had to have been taken somewhere between the Earth and the Moon.
Yeah, for the size of the Earth in the photograph, it must have been at least a third of the way to the Moon.
Yeah,
which is 80,000 miles.
Which means
or
that
probably
as
more.
big as that thing was, it should have crashed and killed us all, or unleashed the alien horde.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been, and obviously it would have been enormous to be the scale of it was in that photograph.
We'd have seen it
but
all
it would
the
have
time.
been it would have been an altitude of thousands of miles.
Yeah.
Not just, and so yeah, the whole thing is just absurd.
So what I want people to do is I want them to keep this in mind and keep an objective view on this, so that when they're looking at it and they can kind of pull the details out and not just take the bait and just swallow it all at once, but really try to figure out what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Or what
Well,
you're being told.
You'd have to be pretty damn gullible to look at that photograph and think it has anything to do with the Black Knight satellite, don't you think?
Well, in the original image that I showed you guys, it looks kind of metallic spaceshipy because it's zoomed and it's fuzzed.
yeah.
And I can see how somebody, without taking context into it, would be like, whoa, what the heck is that?
Yeah, I mean, in the original photo, if you're just looking at within the confines of a website or something like that, you're not going to see the hair. You're not going to see all of the other
'Cause
stuff
it's
that's
cropped.
there. It's all cropped, and it does. I've seen that picture before, and it's hard to kind of step away from that and say, oh, there could totally be something else going on there. It's easy to take it at face value, and we do that a lot.
Yeah.
Next theory on the docket.
What's that?
This is really just a bunch of stories that have been jammed together with hot glue to make it the Black Knight satellite.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get why I make the hot glue reference? Do you remember when you were a kid and you were in art class and you would hot glue stuff together and it would just come out to be this gnarly, gross mass of stuff? Did you ever do that?
No, because I was an artist.
Yeah, me too.
I'm an artist too, but I was still a kid.
Nah.
No, we didn't use hot glue in my art class. We used welding equipment.
No, I was just thinking, I was trying to figure out if you were talking about a bunch of different stories jammed together or a bunch of different things jammed together, like in that episode of Futurama.
Oh no, this is not the Futurama.
Not
This is a bunch of stories jammed together.
Got it.
Which I know that the pair of you do this, and we've just been kind of harping on this. Is
Yeah.
that when we start looking at these things, each individual piece in context, suddenly it becomes much easier to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is we've already walked through this entire story. We're now going to walk through a number of pieces of the story in sequence again to kind of shine some light on some things that were going on.
Sounds good.
Yeah, there was a lot of that stuff. Was
Yeah.
just BS.
Well,
caused by other
let's
things.
start with Nikola Tesla, because he's where we started in the beginning. Today, we do know that Tesla was picking up a repeating signal. But what he was picking up was a pulsar.
Exactly.
We didn't know about pulsars in 1899. We didn't really figure out what they were officially or classify them until 1968. Pulsars put out radio waves in a very specific pattern that's repeating.
Yep.
He didn't know
Sure
that,
enough.
so he took his best guess. I totally understand that. I don't fault Tesla for that, but that's what that was. So I can't say that's the Black Knight satellite. We'll move forward to LDEs.
Yeah.
We don't really know exactly what LDEs are today, but there's over a dozen theories out there. But basically, what we think is going on is that a couple of the theories is that it's possible that radio waves are being picked up and caught in aurora activity caused by solar storms, which is holding on to them before they get spun down to Earth.
There was just a really interesting article released about aurora energy and how it affects the Earth. We'll post it on Facebook eventually, but
Nice.
Yeah, we
just
should.
saying, literally
We
today
will.
there was a new study.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen
It was
that
very
today.
interesting,
Okay.
yeah.
Let's see, what do we got? The next one up is it's reflections in the ionosphere that are caused by the magnetosphere.
Yeah, like radio skipping.
Yeah, it's radio
Yeah.
skipping is exactly what it is.
Yep.
And actually, the thing about the reflection, the radio skipping, is it's actually refraction. It's actually that thing's not bouncing off the ionosphere. And I talked about this in the LBE, Lost Boy Larry. LBL. Is that they are actually refracted back downward by the ionosphere. And a similar phenomenon happens under the ocean. Submarine sonars, the passive sonars, will pick up the same signal at two different times because they travel basically different pathways to get to you. You're listening with your hydrophone, and you hear the same noise twice because it takes two different paths to get there. It's being refracted up and down one way. And
Bouncing off the bottom of the ocean and the top of the ocean?
essentially, it's a similar kind of thing, like a sound layer. It's a similar kind of thing as what the ionosphere does.
Oh,
and
okay.
that is, it'll bounce off the bottom of the ocean, then it goes up to a sound to like a layer where there's say a sharp difference in temperature, and there are temperature gradients like
Yeah.
that in the ocean. And it doesn't. It's some people look at it as bouncing up, but really what happens is it goes up into that and it's refracted, bent back downwards.
Got it.
So it's refracted. not really reflected.
Okay.
And
Well, I
it
stand
could be-
corrected.
and so, no, I'm not correcting you. But what I'm saying is that what the experience that what the Navy's experience with sonar is a similar thing, where something will follow two different tracks to get to the same place, and it gets there at different times. The noise does.
Yeah,
And
it's
the
a
same thing
weird
can happen with radio
phenomena.
waves. Yeah,
But
but it's not really unexplainable.
no, yeah, it's weird. But here's the last one that we've got for LDEs, which is, it may be that the radio signals are getting trapped between ionized layers in the atmosphere.
Yep.
Because we do know that happens. There's ionization up there, and it's kind of bouncing around, and then it quote unquote falls out a hole or bounces out a hole that's in the bottom. Now, it's quite as likely that some of them that get trapped in there are bouncing out of holes in the top and shooting into space, but the ones we're picking up are falling out of the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's what's causing the delays. They're skipping around until they finally find a hole to bounce out of.
Yeah. And see, the other thing about the LDEs is, and actually a lot of this, is that if it's an alien satellite, then why is it messing around with this whole LDE crap? It's either going to be totally in stealth mode, or it's going to be sending us direct transmissions saying, "Hey there, how's it going?" Hey,
My name is Garfield, and I
come to
like
Booties.
lasagna, and
Yeah.
come see me.
Yeah, come to Booties because we really want to meet you. And yeah, that's what-
Our English isn't good yet. It's
yeah, we didn't mean it. We didn't mean that at all. Yeah, and so I don't think it's going to be doing weird stuff like rebroadcasting our radio waves to us. That's stupid.
I'll get on board with that.
Yeah.
Let's
okay.
move forward. 1954. Remember we talked about the newspaper reporting of the two satellites that were in a polar orbit?
yeah.
Yeah, it turns out that's not real reporting.
What is it?
It's a couple of reporters and a couple of papers evidently ripping off the dust jacket of a UFO book.
Oh.
Some guy was trying to sell his book about UFOs, and they were having a little fun, and they took some stuff directly out of it and published it, and people picked it up and believed it.
Yeah.
And really, it was just kind of a big joke. I think it was an inside joke that gained more life than they ever thought it would.
What was the date? Was that April 1st? 1954?
I don't know that it was April 1st, but yeah, so that's what's going on there. Let's move forward again. We're going to talk about 1960 and what the U.S. Air Force or the U.S. government found. Here's what's going on in 1960. Remember, there was that unknown dark tumbling object that was picked up, and everybody kind of wigged out because we're in Cold War times.
That was Black Knight Satellite.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
That wasn't?
At the time, so we're talking late 59, all of 60, part of 61, we're putting rockets up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's part of the Discoverer program, where the Discoverer program is going to put satellites out so that we can figure out what's in space, what's on Earth. We're going to figure out all this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
we
the idea.
figured it out already, right?
We did now.
Space is done.
But yeah,
not a mystery at all.
Space is so boring.
We get
now.
it. Okay.
We get it.
Got it.
Turns out, 1992, the CIA, I think it was through the Freedom of Information Act, because it was no longer classified, we found out the CIA was involved in the Discoverer program, and they were putting up, is it Corona?
The Corona satellites?
The Corona satellites. And it sounds like, Joe, you actually have a pretty good idea of what the Corona satellites were, or had you just kind of gone through them?
Yeah, so Corona was really the earliest spy satellite, at least that we had. And what Corona did is it would be in a polar orbit, as we talked about before, for surveying and spying polar low altitude orbits to the best. And it had a number of high definition, really big cameras in it that took a lot of photographs, and then
like 8,000 per.
Yeah, it would just use up its entire roll, and then the camera would be ejected by the satellite, and it would fall into the atmosphere, and it would deploy a parachute, and then this airplane would come along and snag it in midair, I mean, it was really an elaborate operation, and luckily these days we've got electronic. We can just broadcast digital images back.
Much easier.
Yeah, I
way
know.
easier.
We didn't
Yeah.
have that back in those days. We didn't have digital imaging, so they actually had to take film and eject it. And imagine how beautifully timed that had to be.
Had to
that
be
plane,
amazing,
That
yeah.
plane had to be just in the perfect right spot. At
Well,
the
they
exact right
lost a
time.
number of those satellites when they, or the bucket. They called it the bucket.
Yeah.
When it dropped its bucket, they lost a number of buckets, and the first one that they lost eventually was found in Venezuela. And once it was found, they realized that what they needed to do was stop stenciling top secret on it.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
instead,
God.
they put some reward information in 22 languages all over it, so people would turn it in.
That's the
Smart.
most amazing
Smart
thing I've
move.
ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't look at this. It's top secret. Totally top secret.
Guys, it's top secret. Don't touch it.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing: is that so we've talked about the Corona program. Well, what happened is Discover 8. There evidently was some kind of malfunction, and when it went to drop its bucket, its orbit was messed up, and a big chunk of it came off in an unexpected way, and it tumbled around the Earth. Gosh, when was it? It came back. It re-entered the atmosphere in March of 1960, and they're pretty sure the bucket came back down, or probably around that time, because it didn't dump the bucket as it was intended. But that was in a polar orbit and would have been in an erratic orbit because it was screwed up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty positive that that's what was being picked up, because the CIA isn't going to tell the U.S. Air Force what they've got up there because it's so secret. They're not going to just spill, oh, sorry, Ted, this is what it is.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Particularly if it involves admitting a huge mistake.
Well,
Right.
especially a giant, or no, there's more than 50. I can't remember how many of those. No, it's
No,
all
it's a
right.
bunch,
But
yeah,
there
but
was
yeah.
lots and lots of those cameras, and they evolved quite quickly. But they put a lot of those up there, and at a Cold War time, that would have probably caused some kind of clash. I mean, we'd already had the whole Bay of Pigs thing happen right around. It wasn't the Bay of Pigs 1960.
That was 61.
61.
Well, hang on,
It was pretty
yeah.
close on the heels
Yeah.
of this potential nuclear holocaust between two countries. So they didn't want to spill the beans, and they weren't supposed to be doing this.
And also, it was a mistake. Again, you know,
It's a mistake.
you're not about to be like, oh, yeah, sorry, we have this classified program and we kind of messed it up and
Yeah.
lost a half of something that cost more than, you know, we've ever thought of spending anything on anything. You know, it's
Yeah.
just, you don't do that. You don't say that.
No, you don't say that at all.
No, you want to keep quiet about it. But just maybe a little bit of a correction. I thought that what happened with that particular launch, it wasn't so much the bucket dropping wrongly, but it was that on launch, the rocket goes up, and then eventually a couple of casings pop off, and the satellite is released.
Yeah.
And I thought I had thought that one of those casings, for one reason or another, like wound up in orbit instead of going back into the atmosphere and burning up.
I've seen that as well.
And that was that.
And that
and
could
not
very
the
well be,
bucket.
but I also know there was an issue with the satellite itself, and the bucket didn't come down right as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know which it is.
Yeah.
It could have been the casing, it could have been the bucket, it could have been the Corona satellite.
Yeah, the casing I think would be a more likely candidate because
It's big.
it would have a much bigger radar signature.
It would. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Certainly spy satellites have come a long ways.
They're much sneakier.
Yeah,
Much sneakier now.
much better. No buckets.
No. Let's move to one of the next things we talked about, which is Gordon Cooper. Remember that Gordon Cooper saw the green glowing
Oh, yeah.
thing at loop number 15 around the globe?
Yeah.
He adamantly denied that ever happened.
Well, of course he's denying it.
He actually
The Illuminati clearly got to him.
Yes.
He actually provided transcripts, his own transcripts from his end,
Yeah.
to
from
prove that he didn't
from
actually
the mission.
say any of that.
Yeah, he never said any of that. I know.
No, and so
And all those people in mission control, they never heard him say that either.
No, so
Yeah.
I'm guessing they never actually saw it either. We're going to then go to the 1970s when we had Duncan Lunan. I almost called him Duncan Lunan, which
Duncan.
doesn't make any sense.
No.
Duncan Lunan, he never actually said that the transmissions that he was looking at came from the Black Knight satellite. He also seems to believe that they came from 2 points in space, one that was 60 degrees ahead and one that was 60 degrees behind the moon, the course of the moon. And he actually, later on, he acknowledged that he made some major mistakes and what he came up with was wrong, and he recounted the whole thing. He renounced the whole thing.
He retracted it?
Retracted it, yeah. He was like, "Nope, I was wrong.
Well, plus...
I don't know what I was smoking, but that was bad."
Well, plus, I believe Duncan Lunan wasn't actually a scientist. Wasn't he actually a science fiction writer?
That was part of what he did, I believe, yes.
Yeah.
And the last one in the story that we talked about, which was the Endeavour photos.
Yeah.
The space shuttle would always fly in a semi-equatorial orbit.
As does the ICE.
The
Yes.
International Space Station. The yeah, that thing.
Yes.
Yeah. If there is an object moving in a polar orbit, it would have gone by the space shuttle
It would have been zipping.
8 to 20,000 miles per hour.
Oh, yeah.
Which would be really hard to get all of those really awesome high-resolution photos.
Oh, I know. That's I know it's ridiculous. I mean, and let's face it, the combined speeds of the two, because don't forget, the ISS and the
Is
shuttle,
also moving.
they're also booking. They're rocketing along,
Yes.
too.
They see how many sunrises do they see in a day? Do you remember the number? It's like
I don't
20
remember.
Or something
Something like that. It's
Some
ridiculous.
crazy.
Crazy.
It would be fun. I'd love to go up there.
Oh, yeah, I just wish that I could afford the trip.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of money.
Listeners.
Unless this
Yeah,
podcast
yeah.
suddenly becomes a cash cow.
I know, that'd be nice. Yeah. So, and also, it's pretty. There's all these pictures that they took of this object.
Which you can't take when you're both
Well,
moving in.
If you had a really high-speed camera, you could get maybe one shot.
Yeah.
But they took a whole bunch of shots.
They took a whole bunch of
Yeah.
shots. Here's what's going on, though, is the mission logs and stuff. Turns out that during an EVA...
What's that?
What does EVA stand for? It's
like extra vehicular activity.
activity,
or something
yeah.
like that.
They're outside of the space shuttle.
Yeah.
They went outside in space in a spacesuit, is
Oh,
the
okay.
layman's term of
Yep.
it.
And they floated around. They
Floated around,
Eh.
they did some stuff. Well, they accidentally knocked loose a thermal blanket, and it flew away from the space shuttle.
How does that mean? Knocked
I'm
loose?
guessing it was in the cargo compartment. I don't know how it tore loose, but it did. Those things are silver on one side and black on the other, and they're basically a giant chunk of insulated blanket. So if you ever think of the insulation in your house, if you've ever seen that installed...
No, we
it's
had
kinda-
space blankets in our in our earthquake survival kits.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they come in like a little pack that's
Yeah.
fits in your pocket. And
Yeah, something like that. Well, it's a bulkier version of that.
Okay.
But it broke loose and it drifted away. It's dark on one side, silver on the other.
Yeah.
Or it got knocked loose.
Sorry, I'm shaking my head because I'm just thinking about how easy it is to just knock something loose into space like a human.
Yeah, I know. I know. Well, it happened to Tim Robbins.
Don't stop. Just stop.
Okay. Well, it was the blanket was crumpled and folded, and it looked odd, and it had some funny shapes as it drifted away. But we're gonna have to link to this photo. But this is why I love the internet: is somebody actually took the time to take all of those photos, match up the cloud patterns, and scale them appropriately, and you can actually see this thing kind of twisting and tumbling in space. And a
Yeah.
lot
Of course,
of places
yeah.
only show it, as we talked about earlier, one image cropped really close.
And that one image does, in fairness, look
It looks very much like it could have been a spaceship.
yeah, it
of some
totally
kind.
does.
Yeah, but
It's in exactly the right angle, and the shiny bits are exactly where you'd want it. and-
Yeah, I mean, but when you see this where they're all put together, not to
becomes
make a
really
bad
clear.
joke, but it takes the wind out of that alien ship's sail.
no, it does.
I know that was a terrible joke. I'm
It
sorry.
was really awful.
Yeah,
I really cannot make a joke. The last 6 months,
It's
I
sad.
really,
I know,
It's
but yeah,
really- I gotta get a joke-ectomy. Okay, well let's move forward. We're gonna go
okay.
to the last bit here, which is not really a theory, but it is a bit of an explanation of
you-
where maybe the name came from.
the Black Knigget.
The what?
The Black Knigget.
Knight.
Didn't you ever see Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, okay. I wasn't
Don't you
making
know
the
that?
connection.
Now go away, you silly English kniggets. You never, yeah, classic
I do
movie.
remember that. Okay, well, obviously it's British because Joe's making the Monty Python joke. Between 1958 to 1965, the Brits were launching and testing rockets, and it was under the name the Black Knight. The whole thing was initially a ballistic missile program, so they could throw nukes at.
So, like, I'm not quite dead yet. Black
Yeah.
Knight. It's only a flesh wound. Black
Yeah.
Knight? Okay,
they
yeah.
were gonna throw nukes at the Soviet Union, but of course the Soviet Union and the U.S. quickly outpaces them. They have much better rocket technology. So what they do is they just decide to salvage this program, and it was using the Blue Streak missile was the actual missile that it was using, but they were going to go ahead and use it to try to figure out how to get into space. I guess this next part is because they were trying to save money. They farmed out different bits of it to different countries, so to France and to Germany and all these guys. And they did several launches, and every one of the launches, it appears, failed.
Yeah, 'cause-
like they had bad components on every one of them from different places. It wasn't like the Germans were always screwing it up or the French were always screwing up. It was like, oh well, they got it right, but you got it wrong this time.